Hi everyone, it's Stephanie here, and today I have a video to share as part of the Faber-Castell Design Memory Craft guest design team. And for my video today, I'm going to be creating a card, and it's going to feature some canvas flowers that I'm going to create using the Ranger Sticky Back Canvas, as well as products from Faber-Castell Design Memory Craft and some Simon Says stamps. So to get started, I just took a piece of the sticky back canvas and I just cut it down because I won't need a whole 8.5 by 11 piece of it. And I'm just taking the Faber-Castell Design Memory Craft gesso and I'm just using a paintbrush and applying that liberally onto the piece of canvas. And this just acts as a primer for the area that I'm going to be working on, since I know I'm going to be doing some stamping and adding some color onto this canvas piece. And since I don't want it to fully absorb all the color, the gesso just gives a nice layer to work on once it's dry. So now I've just kind of jumped ahead. I've let that gesso dry. I completely covered that canvas piece, and now I'm just going to go ahead and prepare my stamps to do the stamping to create the flowers. So I'm just covering this clear stamp with the black Stampers Big Brush pen, and I didn't prime my stamp ahead of time, meaning I just usually take my stamp and stamp it a couple times when they're new. So you'll see here that I get a not so great impression when I stamp that onto the canvas piece. So I'm not going to end up using that flower, and I'm just going to go ahead and re-stamp them and just coat the stamp there again with the black marker. So now I'm just going to do the second impression here, and you can see that I get a much better result now that I've had a chance to stamp it out. So I'm just going to go ahead and add all of the pieces of the flowers that I'm going to be using to a piece of canvas. So you can see here I have that all done. And now I'm going to be using some gelatos to add color. So I'm going to be using raspberry, watermelon, green tea, lime, and snow cone as my primary colors to do the coloring onto these flowers. So what I'm doing here is I'm just taking the gelatos that I want to use and I'm just rubbing them onto my craft mat, and then spritzing some water onto that mat as well, and just blending the water in with the gelatos to kind of give a little bit of a paint. And I'm just going ahead and using the different colors to do my flowers. I used the watermelon color to do the base coat on the petals, and then I took the raspberry color and just did some coloring on the tips of the flower petals, just to give it a little bit more dimension and detail and not have it so flat looking. So now I'm moving on to the leaves, and I'm just doing the same thing. I just took the lighter of the green, which is the lime gelato, and I just fully covered all of the leaves that I'm going to be using. And then I added some of the green tea color on top to just give just a difference in color. And now to finish it off, I just used the snow cone color and colored in the center of the flowers. So now that I have the flowers complete, I'm just setting those aside to dry, and I'm going to work on the strip of pattern paper that's going to be behind the canvas flowers once the card's complete. So I'm just going ahead and using one of my favorite Hero Arts background stamps. I can't remember the name of it, but it's Flowers and Dots or something like that. I'll have it linked in the supply list. And I just went ahead and covered that with Versamark ink, and I'm going to add some clear embossing powder over top of this. And then I'm going to go ahead and just heat set that so that I have this great pattern embossed onto the white background piece. And then once I have it embossed, I'm going to do a little bit of color on it by using some more gelato colors. And for this part, I'm just going to be using the aqua and the metallic silver gelatos. So I'm just taking the aqua first and rubbing that completely across the embossed piece. Not too firm on that, I'm just kind of lightly rubbing it across the top. And then I took the metallic piece as well and went ahead and just added that in some sections of the piece of paper there. So now as you can see, I'm just taking my finger and just running that around that whole area, and just rubbing in that aqua color and blending it in with the silver color. And once you start to blend it in with your finger, it really lightens it and just gives it a nice subtle aqua shimmery look on the background behind that great embossing of that pattern. And then to finish that off, I just like to take a damp baby wipe and kind of run it down the length of the piece of paper just to kind of pull all that any extra color that's lying on top of the embossing, and then I just take a dry cloth and just run that across as well, just to wipe off any of the wetness that I've added from the baby wipe. So now that I have all of the different pieces created that are going to make up the card, I'm just going to go ahead and work on the assemblage of the card. So I'm just taking my Tim Holtz scissors to cut through the canvas pieces. And I'm just trimming around all of these pieces individually, leaving a tiny border around each of the pieces, just because the canvas will fray a tiny bit, and it just kind of gives to the overall look of what I'm trying to achieve, having all the pieces created out of the canvas. So once I have all of those pieces cut out, as you can see there, I'm just going to go ahead and start to assemble the card. So I'm just having a top folding standard size card, which is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches wide. And then I'm going to fully adhere this piece of the embossed cardstock that we created to the card base. And I'm going to position it slightly to the left on the card base because this is going to be the area that we're going to assemble our completed flower design. So I just went ahead and lined that up on my grid mat just so I can help to get it completely straight. And then I'm just making sure that I center it properly since I have no embossing on each end of that white piece. So I just want to make sure that I completely have all the embossed area on the card. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on there, and then I'm just going to cut off the excess pieces, and then it's time to start the flower assembly. So before I started this card, I kind of laid out the different pieces of the flowers to get an idea of what I wanted to do once it was time to assemble the card. So I kind of have an idea in mind as I'm starting to create this of how I want these flowers to be positioned on that embossed piece. So because this is sticky back canvas, you can actually peel off the backing of the canvas pieces, and it's sticky and will stick right onto the card base. And I didn't really want to do it with all of the pieces because I want the flowers to kind of be able to pop up off of the card a bit, but I did do that with the stems and just went ahead and stuck those directly to the card. And then for the flowers, rather than do that, I'm just putting adhesive right onto that backing that's still adhered to the canvas piece and just going ahead and adhering them that way so I can lift up the petals on the flower pieces. And then as you can see, I added the center pieces with some foam adhesive, and then I did the same thing with the leaves and just used the adhesive directly onto the backing so that I could kind of tilt up the leaf pieces and give them a little bit of dimension off of the card. So now that I have the canvas flowers all assembled, I just need to complete the card by adding my sentiment. So I just went ahead and pre-cut a sentiment banner out of Neenah Solar White cardstock, and I'm just using the same black Stampers Big Brush pen, and I went ahead and colored completely over that sentiment. And the same thing happened as when I did the first stamping on the flower. I hadn't already stamped this sentiment, so when I stamped it on the banner piece there, it didn't give a really good impression. So rather than start over and restamp everything, I decided to use it like I had it and just go ahead and use my Pitt Artist pen in black and kind of trace over all of the letters and give it more of a hand-drawn feel. I just thought it would go with the whole handmade feel of the canvas flowers on the card. So once I had that completed, I just went ahead and added it to the card front with foam adhesive on the right end, and then I just tucked the left end right underneath that leaf that I already had adhered to the card. And then to finish it off, I decided to go ahead and round the corners. So I'm just using my corner chomper there, and I'm using the 1/4 inch rounder, and just went ahead and rounded all 4 of those corners. And then that completes the card. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next month for another Faber-Castell Design Memory Craft video.